Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a special video for this week. And for this one, I want to take a look at gaming in 2023 and give my thoughts and my take on the matter, because 2023 was definitely a very interesting year, to be exact. Though there were certainly some highs and definitely some lows, to be exact, though. But it was definitely interesting, ranging from some really big releases to controversial decisions that some companies may have made, to basically some unfortunate things that either did not go the way that some companies had hoped for, to basically some things shutting down for good or basically being dead and everything like that. So I'm going to break this down into three categories. I'll do part one, which is the good. I'll do part two, which is what I think was the controversial and mixed, just like what I thought was good. And finally, part three, which I thought was bad for gaming in 2023. So we'll start off first with part one, which will be sort of the good and what I thought was definitely a good thing for 2023 in gaming. The first one is, I do have to start with pretty much as the obvious, and that is Baldur's Gate 3. That game, I think, definitely had a good 2023. In my view, I think it really dominated a lot of the gaming landscape, kind of similar to how I felt that Elden Ring did in 2022, to be exact, though, ranging from what started out on the PC, then it made its way over to the PS5, and then finally in December made its way over to the Xbox Series X and S. Got a little bit later due to the whole multiplayer issues, particularly on the Xbox Series S, but there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that basically Baldur's Gate 3 was really a dominant force in 2023, especially winning a lot of awards and in some ways putting a lot of AAA games to shame in terms of how the developers were approaching in terms of that game indeed. Now, I'm not a big Baldur's Gate 3 or Baldur's Gate fan entirely. I'm currently playing it on my Xbox Series S, everything like that, but I will not deny that Baldur's Gate 3, in my view, really dominated 2023 and all. Next one I do want to talk about is Hi-Fi Rush. Now, this one was kind of a bit of a surprise when this was announced in January as a shadow drop during what was basically the Xbox Direct, where they were showing off several different games, or at least 4 to be exact, though. And one was this one worked on by Tango Gameworks, the same studio that did The Evil Within, and of course, Hi-Fi, and of course, Ghostwire Tokyo and all. So to see this one was sort of really neat, and in the end I actually enjoyed the game and everything like that. It was kind of a part rhythm game, part of the type of gameplay mechanics you would see in Platinum's type of games or Devil May Cry in general, and part of it was sort of the 3D platforming that kind of is sort of a throwback during the platforming during the Xbox, the PS2, and the GameCube era. So this one was sort of a bit of a surprise when they announced this, and turned out to be much fun than I had originally had thought. So definitely a good year for Hi-Fi Rush and everything like that. Hopefully folks enjoyed it as much as I did, and it certainly was definitely a good game, and props to Tango Gameworks and everything like that. The next one I do want to talk about is Nintendo, and I would say if this is truly the last year for the Nintendo Switch, I do think it was definitely a very good year, especially with some of the games that Nintendo released basically this year, ranging from Fire Emblem Engage, which to me, visually, I would say for a Fire Emblem game, this wasn't necessarily bad, to games like Metroid Prime Remastered, to Advance Wars Reboot Camp 1 and 2, but obviously some of the biggest one was really The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This is a game that definitely was kind of like a final song or swan song, if I'm saying the name correctly, for the Nintendo Switch. And if this was truly the last year for the Nintendo Switch, this definitely, 2023 definitely ended on a high note indeed. It's going to be very interesting to see how Nintendo announces their next system and when they announce it and everything like that. But if this truly was the last, basically, if this was truly the last year for the Nintendo Switch, it definitely was a good one, at least in my book, though. The next one I do want to talk about is Mario. Mario definitely had a very good 2023 indeed, with 3 major releases, 2 being games and 1 being the movie, of course. The two major releases would be Super Mario RPG, a remaster of the original 1996 classic when it was released back on the Super Nintendo, to Super Mario Bros. Wonder, another 2D Mario entry game, with a game which visually I would say kind of impressive, almost close to the type of visuals you'll see in Donkey Kong Country Return or Tropical Freeze or Rayman Origins and Legends. So that certainly was definitely a very fun 2D game. But the big one had to be the Super Mario Bros. The movie that launched in April. That movie did very well box office wise, and it definitely shows that movies based and TV shows based off of video games, in my view, certainly have gotten better and not perfect, but definitely better. And that's certainly what's nice to see. We finally got the Mario movie that I think a lot of us were waiting for a long, long time. So yes, Mario definitely had a very good year and all. Another show based off a video game or movie or show actually was The Last of Us, premiering on Max, formerly known as HBO Max. And that one did absolutely also very well indeed. Just like with the Mario movie though, it definitely showed that, like I said, movies or TV shows based off of video games can work if done correctly and everything like that. So yeah, Last of Us certainly did very well indeed in terms of basically being on Max and everything like that. The next one, of course, is the GTA 6 trailer. I think a lot of us have been waiting for finally seeing what GTA 6 will look like and everything like that and all. Obviously, Rockstar had to release it under different circumstances after the trailer started to leak and everything, but despite that, the trailer definitely blew up online indeed, and I think a lot of us are definitely looking forward to GTA 6 now that we know it's going to be set in Vice City, though it'll be interesting to see how Vice City looks and everything like that. Like I said in one of my 2 cent videos, I still have concerns about this title, ranging from the quality of it to, given how a lot of AAA games have been handled lately, to see if Rockstar, how they're going to handle this game. And the release of the Definitive Edition certainly did not help Rockstar's reputation to a certain extent. But, we'll see how it is. This game will not be out until 2025, barring any major delays or anything like that. But so far, right now, there is certainly excitement for GTA 6, especially what was shown so far, though. Next one we want to talk about is Spider-Man 2, the sequel to the 2018 game, and that one did very well indeed, though. The ability to basically play not only as both Miles Morales as Spider-Man, but also Venom. I'm still playing the game and everything like that. It was definitely a very good release for basically for Sony indeed. It was definitely a very strong first-party game for them, so that certainly was definitely nice and all. And since the game seemed to have done very well, it's no doubt in my mind that a Spider-Man 3 is obviously going to happen and everything like that. So, yeah, Spider-Man 2 may have not won any awards at the Game Awards or anything like that, but it still did very well, nevertheless and all. The next thing we need to talk about is that Microsoft was finally able to close the APK deal. Now, this has been a roller coaster since 2022, though, when Microsoft announced that they were going to be purchasing Activision Blizzard. And there were issues of whether this deal was going to go through or not, though. In April, the CMA blocked the deal on the grounds of certain monopoly issues. This led to basically speculation of whether this deal was even going to go through or not. But by August, when it was brought to an FTC judge, the FTC judge ruled in favor of Microsoft, saying that while the deal definitely deserved to be scrutinized, they didn't see any foul or any wrongdoing on Microsoft and Activision or on their part, basically leading to the CMA renegotiating with Microsoft and everything like that to eventually them supporting this deal going through, and by October allowing Microsoft to finally close the deal for good. Obviously, the FTC is still taking Microsoft to court, though many do not believe that FTC has really a chance or anything like that. But there is no doubt in my mind that while there were definitely ups and downs for this deal, there's no doubt that Microsoft is pleased that they finally now have closed this deal and can put it through the rearview mirror, though. It'll be very interesting to see how they handle Activision Blizzard going forward, but obviously Microsoft is finally pleased that they were able to close this ABK deal once and for all in 2023. And last but not least, though, is we have to talk about Cyberpunk 2077, particularly with Phantom Liberty. Now, this game it got off to the worst possible start ever when it was released in 2020. Given the quality of the title and how it looked, it definitely hurt CD Projekt Red's reputation really, really bad. And in all honest opinion, I believe they absolutely deserve the backlash and criticism and all that stuff. But with 2023, after about 3 years later, though, the game is definitely in a much better position than it is. They released their only expansion, the Phantom Library, and basically have sort of concluded in terms of what they were set to do with Cyberpunk 2077. Obviously, there may be some updates here and there, but it looks like it has finally reached the area that CD Projekt Red was hoping to reach with Cyberpunk 2077. Don't get me wrong, CD Projekt Red absolutely deserved the criticism and backlash, and the fact that it took them this long to get this game to the condition that we all wanted it to be in is still unacceptable and everything like that, especially if you're asking us to pay $70 for this and everything like that. But at the same time, I also will give CD Projekt Red credit to basically sticking with the game, fixing it, and bringing it to this state that we're all actually very pleased with. It also, I think the anime Cyberpunk Edge Runner on Netflix also kind of helped the situation as well. So apparently this one definitely turned out as well as they had hoped that they did. Hopefully lessons were learned to this when they go into their next game, which is supposedly Witcher 4, and possibly a sequel to Cyberpunk 2077 and maybe a new IP. But whatever the case is, I certainly hope CD Projekt Red have learned their lesson throughout this whole situation with it. But in either case, I'm glad to see Cyberpunk 2077, particularly with its DLC, Phantom Liberty. I'm glad to see it's in the state that I think a lot of us can be pleased with and everything. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 2, which will be the controversial and the mix. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my look back on gaming in 2023. So with part 2, we are now going into what I consider the controversy / mix. The ones that, I mean, you can look at it in certain ways if you want to. You could look at it as both either may not be as bad or it's actually was as bad and all. So this is my take on what I thought was mixed or controversial for 2023. The first one, obviously, was basically Insomniac Games. And while Insomniac Games certainly did well with Spider-Man 2 and everything like that, it was apparently what happened was basically them being hacked. And certainly was not a great thing for them. And it kind of raises questions about Sony's handling of the situation, considering they have been hacked before and everything like that. So it certainly was not great, I think, for basically Insomniac in terms of being hacked and everything like that. They had a good 2023 with Spider-Man 2, but yeah, a lot of this information getting out there and being held hostage, yeah, it does raise questions about some of the security in terms of a lot of this data over at Sony and everything like that. Excuse me. The next one I'm going to view is more on the mix than the controversial side of it, and that has to do with Mario's original voice actor, Charles Martinet, retiring basically from voice acting for Mario, although now he's basically being dubbed the Mario ambassador. It said the new person who's voicing it is by the name of Kevin Afghani, if I'm saying his name correctly, though. Now, I am still a little mixed on the idea of Charles Martinet retiring and everything like that. Part of me wants him to continue the voice Mario, but part of me also kind of understands at some point, though, he was going to retire, that he wasn't going to voice Mario forever and everything like that. So part of me kind of understands that the situation was going to happen and all. It was sort of similar view I had with hearing that Chris Pratt was going to voice Mario in the Super Mario Brothers movie. And while I am still mixed on him voicing Mario in general, I will say his portrayal of Mario wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't as bad or awful or anything like that. And I will say, after hearing Kevin Afghani voice Mario in Super Mario Bros. Wonders, I will say that I'm pleased with what I hear and everything like that. Sure, it may not be Charles Martinet, but so far I think he's done a pretty good job voicing Mario at this time, though. It will be very interesting to see how he voices him in future Mario games and everything like that. But so far, not bad based on my time playing with Super Mario Brothers Wonder and everything like that. So, yeah, a little mixed that Charles Martinet's not going to be voicing Mario anymore, but I'm not losing sleep over a new voice actor voicing Mario by the name of Kevin Afghani, if I'm saying the name correctly and everything like that. The next one I do want to talk about is basically Unity technology, which is basically a tool used by a lot of basically developers, some mostly I think indie, but we've seen other developers have used it before, and they apparently caused a major backlash, and that had to do with changing certain prices of certain things, especially when it came to situations as those who use Unity having their games on Game Pass or any other subscription service. This led to an enormous backlash towards Unity that tried to say, hey, you got to talk to Microsoft about this, until they had to backpedal on a lot of the stuff. This also led to a situation that led to the CEO, John Riccitiello, to resign from Unity and everything like that. So, yeah, Unity kind of dug themselves into a hole this situation, though. And while it remains to be seen if they can earn the trust from developers who felt betrayed by Unity, we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. It certainly was very controversial for Unity technologies and everything like that led to the CEO having to step down. So, not a great situation from Unity at all. And last but not least, we had two releases, or big AAA releases, though, that, well, let's just say the response to that, depending on how you want to look at it, can be either mixed to a certain degree. And I'm talking about games like Starfield and Final Fantasy 16, though. Starfield definitely basically was sort of mixed for a lot of folks, for a lot of people out there. There are those who actually like the game, and then there are those who hate it, though. I think a lot of it has to do with your view of Bethesda RPGs in general. Some folks will like them, some don't. And I think for some thought Starfield would be like, really, changing the way Bethesda makes games or everything like that. Others felt like, it did what it did. It was Skyrim in space. So the game definitely got mixed response. It did do very well, but it certainly definitely got a mixed response for fans of Bethesda games, or just Bethesda games in general, though. But still, there's no denying the game actually did well and everything like that. Though, I will admit, not on the scale as Baldur Gate 3. And then, of course, there was Final Fantasy 16. And this had to do with Square Enix, which, let's just say, they had somewhat of a rough 2023, though, especially with Forspoken not doing very well for them, though. That led them to basically merge or absorb Illumination Productions and everything like that. And with Final Fantasy 16, it was definitely sort of a mixed response depending on who you ask, though. The game definitely was basically more in line, the gameplay being more in line with sort of like the Devil May Cry or Bayonetta series, to be exact, in terms of gameplay mechanics and everything like that. Some folks liked that, some folks really did not. Others, and then of course there was a story that definitely had a bit more of a Game of Thrones vibe to it, though, which for some that wasn't a big deal or anything like that. For others, it was like not the traditional Final Fantasy that they were hoping for. And then of course there was the sales number in terms of how well the game did or did not. And Square Enix unfortunately gave some mixed signals about this, and to the fact that they have a history of raising expectations way too high for their games, though, and ultimately setting unrealistic sales numbers to unfortunately set themselves for disappointment, though. So the game, depending on your view, may or may have not done well, but the release certainly was considered controversial depending on your view of how Square Enix handled Final Fantasy 16 and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 3, which will be the bad, or what I thought was pretty bad for 2023 in gaming. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of my look at my take in gaming in 2023. So for part 3, we're going to get into the bad, the parts that, well, were really not great depending on who you're asking. The first one has to do with Stadia. Obviously, Google tried their hardest with Stadia and everything like that. They wanted to make it a success and everything. And while the concept and the idea wasn't necessarily bad, unfortunately, they had a really hard time executing it, especially with the reputation Google has earned in terms of the Google graveyard and everything like that. And there were a lot of things that were going against them, especially once it became clear of situations like Microsoft buying Bethesda and everything like that. They tried to go into sort of turn it into a white label product, basically canceling first-party studios, but eventually they decided to close Stadia down for good. It's really unfortunate because the technology was definitely impressive, and it showed us an idea that cloud gaming is definitely possible, and the idea certainly is there. It's just the execution was certainly not, though. Perhaps maybe as the internet technology gets better and better, maybe cloud gaming will truly start to take off and maybe eventually become the new norm and everything. But for now, we're not there yet, and unfortunately, Google tried their hardest, and well, sadly enough, it did not succeed in any way, and it is unfortunate to see it shut down, though, but I'm not really surprised considering Google's history and everything like that. And the next thing, especially another unfortunate situation shutting down, is the 3DS and the WiiU eShops were basically shutting down for good. And for me, I'm kind of mixed on this one, to be exact. On one hand, it kind of makes sense considering where Nintendo was with the Switch and really becoming their main system and everything like that. But at the same time, the fact that these two shops were shutting down, you could re-download the games if you actually purchased them before, it kind of highlights one of the problems with digital purchases and everything like that, in terms of do you really own the rights to a lot of these games, and basically you don't have any control once they sort of shut down the servers for them or delist them for good. I mean, look what happened with the whole GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition. They delist the original games, put out the Definitive Edition, which did not live up to the expectation a lot of people had hoped for. So it's one of those unfortunate issues surrounding, digital purchases and everything like that. And to see the 3DS and Wii U eShop shutting down is, well, a bit unfortunate indeed, though. So very unfortunate to see those things shut down indeed. The next one I do want to talk about is Redfall. This did not exactly help Microsoft in certain ways when this was launched and everything like that. I mean, unfortunately, the idea behind the game looked really interesting and everything like that, but its launch was abysmal at best. To make matters worse, we started to learn what was happening with this game in terms of ranging from Arcane Austin want nothing to do with this game whatsoever. Microsoft's hands-off approach, while not necessarily a bad thing, it became apparently clear they should have been hands-on when there were issues that were starting to emerge. And it was embarrassment, not only for Phil Spencer, but for the whole concept behind Game Pass in general, of putting these AAA type of games or first-party games on their server. I mean, yeah, games like Hi-Fi Rush and everything like that was great, but this really did not help them. And this also came off the heels at the time when the ABK deal was thrown in jeopardy over the CMA's decision. But even though those two aren't connected, still, Redfall was not in the best position ever. Now, over time, the game did get some updates. It did get a 60 FPS patch, and supposedly currently on Steam, it's getting a mostly positive rating last time I checked. But in either case, it did not deliver on what they had hoped for. And it will be very interesting to see what happens going forward, whether we finally get that offline mode that they promised us or not. And judging by some of the hiring lately, though, it does seem like they are really trying to move on from Redfall for good, though. But I think Redfall was not a great situation for Microsoft or for Bethesda or even Arcane as well, particularly Arcane Austin, though. And last but certainly not least, though, 2023 was not a great year in terms of gaming, in terms of a lot of the staff, though. I mean, while they certainly made a lot of money during 2023, there were a lot of layoffs, unfortunately, ranging from Microsoft to basically even some at Naughty Dog, especially with the cancellation of The Last of Us multiplayer factions, to basically even Ubisoft as well. But to me, the biggest one had to be Embracer Group, to be exact. This was a studio that was on a major spending spree on buying so many of these studios and all. And when it became clear that when it became clear that deal that they were working on, which was supposedly around $2 billion, basically fell through, this had a major impact. And they had to start figuring out ways to make up for it. And a lot of it was, a lot of studios had to be shut down and everything like that. Voltron was shut down for good, although the release of the Saints Row reboot, obviously that game did not do as well as they had hoped for, though, and that kind of created that situation, though. We know that they're looking at possibly selling off Gearbox, and just recently we learned that they have now shut down Free Radical Design and canceled what could have been supposedly a remake of the original Time Splitters and everything like that. So yeah, they were the ones that really had to lay a lot of people off. So a lot of people unfortunately lost their jobs in 2023, though, and hopefully they'll be able to find new jobs and everything like that. But yeah, a lot of layoffs happened in 2023 in the gaming world. But to me, I have to say the biggest layoffs had to come from, in my view, Embracer Group and all. Okay, this concludes my take on gaming in 2023, of what I thought were a good, controversial mix and the bad. And again, these are my takes on it. What are yours? What are your thoughts about gaming in 2023? Were there highlights you thought that were interesting in 2023 in gaming? So you thought there were some good highlights? You thought there were some mixed or controversial highlights, or some bad highlights in any way, though? Were there any stories I may have missed out in terms of talking about gaming in 2023? Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to. And feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal me, Patreon, or Steam Labs. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!